Welcome to some new r/malicious compliance stories, where people comply to the letter but not the spirit of a request. I hope you had a great day. The first story is called Incompetent Leadership. This happened around 2010. I work in IT for a state agency. Since it's government, our leadership positions are mostly appointed by the governor, rather than being promoted from within. As a result, we had a director of IT who knew nothing about IT. We'll call her Karen. Karen came from a completely different unit, and due to a union dispute over a hostile work environment, she was reassigned to our unit, rather than fired. This frequently happens with appointees. They do not like to fire them because it makes the governor look bad. Unsurprisingly, the unit began going downhill after she took over, because she was extremely emotional and tried to micromanage everything. My normal job duties involve computer repair and networking, covering multiple offices. I volunteered to help the central office create our computer software image, naively thinking it would help me get promoted. But all in all, it was just tedious and was starting to cause me to fall behind in my normal duties. I had been working on the image for about 6 months, updating it when needed. We work very standard hours, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. On Thursday at 4 PM, we get an urgent message from Karen, stating that we all must report to central office Friday morning at 9 AM and to bring our USB flash drives. We were told that if we didn't bring the flash drives, we would be sent back to get them. She didn't say why. Obviously, I wasn't happy about how unprofessional it was to give such little notice about a meeting that requires a 2-hour drive runway, and to also reschedule my entire day of meetings for PC repairs. I called some associates in the central office to find out what was going on. Apparently, Karen had convinced herself that flash drives were bad and that IT field support had bad stuff on them. Completely on a whim, mind you. The plan was to collect all flash drives, wipe them and then give them back without telling us. The sheer stupidity of this idea was off the charts, considering we kept all of our important troubleshooting tools and information on there. Since I did the imaging, my flash drive had everything regarding our computer image on it. All software, drivers and multiple versions of Windows, along with the complete documentation of how to set it all up. I was not happy about how Karen did not tell us what was being done or why. I decided to just play dumb and came to the meeting and turned in the drive. Sure enough, they were wiped without our consent or knowledge and then given back to us. A few weeks go by and they ask me about how things are going with the image. I simply tell them that it's been erased by Karen without my knowledge, so unfortunately there was nothing I could do and I am not about to recreate it all from scratch. At this point I was sick of volunteering my time for nothing in the central office, and it was making my normal job much harder, so I was happy to wash my hands of that. Needless to say, the central office had to recreate the image and documentation completely from scratch, dozens of hours of work. Karen was eventually reassigned to another unit, and things got better in IT after that. I'm kind of like a folk hero in that agency now. Everyone was very happy to have Karen gone. The next story is called Working Hours. I was a callow youth a few jobs back on my second proper IT job. The place was quite relaxed, and being somewhat of a night owl, I worked a late shift, usually about midday to 9 PM. I got quite a lot of things done when there were fewer users around to complain about interruptions, especially server upgrades. We had Solaris file servers in various places throughout the town. I would generally publicize an upgrade that would take the system down at 5 PM, and it would be back up by 9 AM the next morning. This included the time to back up the data in single user mode, upgrade any hardware, reinstall the OS, restore the data and tidy things up. I would generally work through the night to get this done, clocking off at about 4 AM when the user data restore was happening, and be back at around 10 to pick up any immediate issues. I got into an email ding-dong with one of my colleagues. He was wrong of course, and it had expanded to include the boss who told us to sort it out. I proved my point with data, and then it all went quiet. A couple of days later, the boss says he's had complaints about my timekeeping and he'd like to see me in at 9 from now on. I guessed that the colleague had complained, and so I asked the boss directly. He said he couldn't tell me that, but his facial expression made it obvious. So I said okay and shifted my life around for the new schedule. About 3 weeks after this, I was due to upgrade the IT department server, and I'd say that it would take a little longer, as I was only doing 9 to 5 and nobody really commented. So Monday morning, I take the system down to single user mode and start the user data backups and let it run for most of the day. Around 3 PM I change tapes. This was pre-2000, and start the OS and backups, and at 5 PM I go home. 9 AM the next morning, I roll in with a coffee and start the reinstall from CD media, and then sit down and check the console occasionally. Starting about 10:30, there's a stream of people asking when the server will be back up. Maybe towards the end of today, maybe early tomorrow. Depends on tape speed restores. People are not getting their work done. They couldn't. So they were mainly answering phone calls, creating local documents, surfing the web, such as it was back then. About 4-ish, the boss turns up and says, "Okay, you've made your point. When will the server be back up?" Depends. I can have it all working when people come in tomorrow. Or I can start working on it again tomorrow morning at 9. What's your call? And that's how I got my new 10:30 to 11 start time negotiated. I should say that the boss was a reasonable dude. We generally got on, and he admitted the benefit of me working those hours in our subsequent conversations. He was also kind enough to only schedule meetings involving me in the afternoons. The third story is called Change the Grade. I moved to a new state to take a high school teaching job in a rural town. I liked my fellow teachers and almost all my students, but this was a small town with the usual assortment of outsized attitudes. One student was particularly lazy. Her parents both worked in the small school district, admin at the high school, teacher at the middle school. She rarely turned anything in on time, and what was turned in was generally rushed or incomplete, as if she'd gotten the instructions secondhand. Somehow though, she had straight A's in all of her classes. I quickly figured out why. When she turned in another late, incomplete assignment, and I very generously gave it a D, her overall grade in class dropped to a B. I was called in the next day to a meeting with the principal and both of her parents, who immediately complained I was being unfair and capricious with my grades. They accused me of not giving students the instructions, so I showed them the instruction paper, which I passed out and went over in class. They accused me of not giving her specifically a copy, but I remember handing it to her, and I told them why. She was making out with her boyfriend when I was trying to go over the instructions. They didn't like hearing that part. They accused me of not being clear with the deadline, but it was the second line of the directions. They accused me of not fairly grading her work, but when I showed them her work, they clearly hadn't seen it before. They wondered whether I'd gotten assignments mixed up before I showed them her name on it. The principal asked me to change the grade in the gradebook. I asked whether she'd have to redo the assignments first, but that was declined by her parents. I understand why my principal caved. It wasn't worth trying to fight two employees in a small rural district already struggling to recruit people. So I went back to my classroom and changed every student's grade to a 100 in the gradebook. No special treatment. Even the ones who hadn't turned in a single thing got a perfect score. Many students asked me why their grades changed, but I never addressed it. I would just brush them off by saying not to worry about it, though clearly rumors were spreading like wildfire in the small school. Even the secretary and the principal asked me about it later on. I only said that yes, I changed her grade. The principal looked like he wanted to ask me why I changed all the grades, but he just shrugged and walked away. He never interfered in my gradebook after that. The student's parents transferred her out of my class, and her boyfriend also transferred a day later. So it was an all-around win for me. The last story is called Can't Do Anything Right. Many years ago, the early 2000s, I worked at a US health insurance company. I had worked my way through the grunt queues and was splitting my job time between being a patient advocate and a provider representative. Yeah, I know, those two are often in conflict. But here begins the story. Our local hospital had recently regenerated their contract with us. They were looking to double their pay schedule, and they were one of the only hospitals in the area, so they had us over a barrel. But they also were notorious for screwing up their billing, so some new clauses were added to the new contract. Enter Jane, a billing agent from the hospital. She calls in with an issue, and I can tell this woman didn't have her coffee. You people screwed up a claim. Again, I don't know why you can't just do your jobs and pay us right. Well, let me take a look for you and see if I can find out what happened. Fine, but you better be fast. I know you guys like to try to make us wait, so we hand up and go our way. She then proceeds to tell me the date and patient of the claim. I politely put her on hold and look it over. And I start to smile. Because this is beautiful. Thank you for waiting. I see the claim denied as provider liable, which is obviously wrong. Because we had the surgery authorized, and you people screwed up, so just fix it. As I was saying, this was denied as provider liable. While the patient was authorized for a nose job due to medical need, I see the claim was sent by you with a diagnosis showing it was cosmetic. Well, obviously it isn't. So just click your buttons and change that to the right one. I'm sorry, it's considered fraud for me or anyone here to alter the diagnosis you submitted. Also, you billed us on the same claim form for other, obviously cosmetic indicators. Then I'll just resubmit it with a medical code, and it will be denied as a duplicate. Then I'll put it back and send a new one in. You can feel free to do that. But please be advised that a copy of this claim and your call notation will be sent to the approval team. Also, please review your new contract for billing guidelines. And just what is that supposed to mean? This claim was denied as provider liable correctly. And according to your contract, you are not allowed to bill the client. So a letter has been triggered to be sent to them, advising that the services on this claim were denied and they are not responsible for the charges according to the provider contract. What? What do you mean? What am I supposed to do with this bill? I would suggest you work with your financial officers, as this will need to be a full write-off. And with that, I hung up. I then write up the letter for that patient, which definitely isn't a normal thing to do. It may not have even been sent if I wasn't so cranky at being called incompetent. And I made sure everyone in provider services and medical approval reviewed every claim for that hospital with a fine-tooth comb. You know, just in case us people screwed up again. And with that, we end today's video. Let me know what you think about the stories. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the stories and today's video? I hope you enjoyed the video. If you like what I do and would like to support me, please subscribe and hit the like button. I hope you have a great day. Stay safe. Bye bye.